Jose Mourinho won everywhere until he came to Spurs.
I hope the Tottenham fans don't get me wrong, but the only club in my career where I don't have still a deep feeling is Tottenham.
Antonio Conte won everywhere until he came to Spurs.
I'm not used to this position. And Tottenham story is this: 20 years that there is the owner and never won something.
Thomas Frank overachieved for years until he came to Spurs.
We have some fantastic fans. We're nothing without the fans. We need them, and they are very much allowed to be disappointed, no problem.
This isn't a coincidence anymore. At what point do we stop blaming the coach and start questioning the club?
Look at Tottenham as a business, unbelievable, unbelievably run, and that's what he does. If he had the same energy for trying to win something for Tottenham, they'll be winning something. Remember, they've had arguably one of the greatest goal scorers in English history, alongside Wayne, of course, in respects of that's come through their academy. He didn't build anything around that. He was scoring goals. How many golden boots did Harry get in the end? Was it 3 or 4? You got somebody who's capable of doing that. You didn't build a team around them. They should have been winning things.
Tottenham isn't a small club. They are part of the Premier League's Big Six. They are always in and around the battle for Champions League football. They boast one of the biggest stadiums not just in the Premier League but in Europe too. According to Forbes, they rank 9th as the most valuable team in the world. With the money and the exposure, there's always the expectation from both the fans and the board to compete. But the constant at Spurs hasn't been the fight for trophies, it's something else. Constant managerial resets. Tottenham isn't failing because of bad managers. Tottenham is failing because the job itself is a ticking time bomb. Even the best managers in the world have experienced it at Spurs now, and it doesn't get any bigger than the special one himself. It should have sent mixed signals when Mourinho dropped his first Spurs interview as head coach.
What can I promise? Passion for my job, but also passion for my club. It's a privilege when a manager goes to a club and feels, that happiness in relation to the squad that is going to have.
For all his talk about the stadium and how the academy was really promising, it's the one club where Mourinho would have known that the job wasn't necessarily to build, but to become successful from the start. At the time of his appointment, Spurs had gone 12 years since they last won the 2008 Carling Cup. To many, Mourinho's style didn't fit with the agenda of the club long term, but also to the same group, Mourinho could become the X factor in finally winning trophies.
He's got his verve back, he's got a twinkle in his eye, he looks excited to be part of this. He's got a very good squad of players, you have to say. It's all a bit disjointed at the moment, but we've seen before, if anybody can pull a team together, out of sort of adversity, Mourinho can do it.
With players like Harry Kane, Heung-min Son and Gareth Bale he later brought on loan, Mourinho had Spurs briefly at the top of the Premier League heading into Christmas of 2021, but that was as good as it got. He had a fallout with certain fan favourites at the club. Dele Alli was the prime example.
I am 56 now, and yesterday I was 20, and today I'm 56. Time flies, and I think one day, you will regret if you don't reach what you can reach.
See, Mourinho questioned the system and the mentality of the players he saw. He clearly wasn't working, not because Jose was bad and couldn't get the best out of the team. No. See, he had taken Spurs to the league final where they were set to play Manchester City, but just days before his big test at Wembley, Spurs dropped the axe on Mourinho.
The results from the first day you started at Spurs, you're 4th in the league. You're in a cup final. You've got obviously problems with the defence that aren't of your making. Do you feel it's an unfair treatment of you?
Not going to stick. You know me.
On one hand, they blamed the structure and the defeats for his sacking. But the reality is that since he was appointed as manager, only Manchester City, Liverpool and Manchester United had picked up more Premier League points at the time than Mourinho. He had taken them to a League Cup final and given his track record in finals, was potentially on the verge of ending the trophy drought. Mourinho didn't fail at Spurs because he was no longer special. He failed because Tottenham wanted instant success without understanding the cost. Chairman Daniel Levy and the board wanted to prioritize attacking football at all costs. So it makes absolutely no sense that the man they got in to replace Jose was none other than Nuno Espirito Santo. But even before his tenure officially began, Nuno Espirito Santo was doomed to fail.
Be yourself And how long you stay in the job, but at least be yourself. It almost like that wasn't his type of team. And it doesn't feel like a perfect fit, I must say that. On the back of Jose Mourinho, it almost feels like Jose Mourinho light.
Jose Mourinho light, the 2.0. Nuno's game plan was based on keeping men behind the ball. His Wolves team just before he joined Spurs had averaged less than a goal per game the season before. And it didn't take long for the world watching to see that this was a disaster already in the making. After a damaging 3-0 defeat to Crystal Palace, it became very clear. This wasn't a case of Nuno being a bad manager, it was the case of a bad appointment. He tried to be himself at Spurs. He tried to play the football that had made him a success at Wolves. The problem was that the Tottenham board had made a mistake. Nuno wasn't even the first name on the list. He was the last choice. He never aligned with the club's vision, and so just 4 months after his appointment, he was sacked. Then came a different type of winner. But just before we get into who that was, there's a subscribe button to the Football Armageddon channel down below that if you click will help us create more content like this. Thanks. With Antonio Conte, the appointment sent shockwaves around the rest of the league.
I just remind you, he's done this before. After he left Juventus, Euro 2016, he took over the Italian national team, probably the worst, least talented Italian national side in 50, 60 years, and he did exceptionally well with them. They reached the quarterfinals, they lost to Germany on penalties. So I wonder if he's just betting on himself that he can do that with this group of players.
To start with, it was Antonio Conte who rejected Spurs months earlier. The reason why they ended up with Nuno Espirito Santo. The fact that he then went back to Conte despite the earlier rejection indicated they had a clear plan. That was until the details of the contract came out.
To do significant things. The only thing I don't understand, and maybe it's because it's the vogue now, an 18-month contract. I know it takes him to the end of 2023, right? So it fits into those sort of time spans. But why would you bring somebody in to do a job without the toolkit there? Chelsea had the toolkit. They clearly had the toolkit. But Tottenham don't have the toolkit yet.
But so why give him a long-term deal?
Because it's a long-term project, isn't it?
18 months, basically a year and a half. At that point, it was then clear that this wasn't about a long-term rebuild. Spurs didn't care about the process anymore. They wanted to win. It's why they got Conte. The problem here wasn't the man. I mean, Conte had won Serie A with Juventus and Inter Milan. Even more impressively, he'd won the Premier League in his first season with Chelsea. In his final season at the club, he won the FA Cup. Antonio Conte was proving success, but the big issue here was the time he had. 18 months again. It didn't take a genius to understand that Antonio Conte would need more than 18 months to whip Spurs into contenders of some sort in any competition he played in. True, he never stayed at any club for longer than 3 years as a manager, but at the same time, that was equivalent to a year and a half with Spurs. Still, Conte attempted a miracle. It started by aggressively whipping the team into shape. Then he got the likes of Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur to the club. He won 10 of his 14 final games in the 2021-22 campaign to take Spurs to 4th place and finish above rivals outside in the race for the Champions League. Under him, Heung-min Son won the Premier League Golden Boot that year alongside Mohamed Salah. The signs were positive until they weren't. See, Conte was getting angry with the transfer policy at the club, and that anger was kind of justified. It didn't make any sense. The club wanted him to win, but kept signing players for the future instead of the present. And so the tensions continued to build. Conte also wasn't happy with the level of professionalism he had with the current players, and that's when he hits him. It wasn't that the job was bigger than him. It wasn't that Conte didn't understand Spurs. If anything, Conte understood Spurs too well. And when he realized what the real situation was, the Italian exploded.
This is the first time in my career to see a situation like this. And until now, I wasn't able to change it. Not to change, but compare last season, the situation went to become worse. They used to here don't play for something important. They don't want to play under pressure. They don't want to play under stress. Yeah, it's easy in this way. And Tottenham story is this. 20 years that there is the owner and never won something. Until now, I tried to hide the situation, but now, no.
That infamous interview was media gold. Conte addressed the history of the club. He openly said what everyone had been whispering in hushed tones. It's why Spurs couldn't win, because every time they changed the manager without looking inwards, that was the problem. The rant was explosive. but he also revealed the real true issues at the club. See, the Tottenham board felt embarrassed after Conte's fallout, and so they decided to act quickly. And less than 24 hours after that interview, Conte was sacked. After Christian Stellini and Ryan Mason took temporary charge of the club, they decided to make a permanent decision in the summer of 2023, and this one was different. They got in Big Ange Postecoglou from Celtic. Tottenham had left the recent line of appointing big name coaches. At the time, Big Ange had some level of success behind him. He spent 2 years in Scotland coaching Celtic and won 5 trophies, including a historic domestic treble in his final season. Spurs had also just lost Harry Kane to Bayern Munich, and so attracting a top-level coach without arguably the club's biggest superstar in years would have been almost impossible. Still, Big Ange took the job. In his first season at the club, the first without Harry Kane for more than 8 years, he took Spurs to 5th, just 2 points off Aston Villa in 4th place, and then dropped an epic line of commentary.
I'll correct myself, I don't usually win things, I always win things in my second year.
And so the real drama was in his second season. They lost 22 of their 38 league games last season, a very bad record, but this does not tell the full story. Just like the managers before him, Big Ange had a mandate to achieve success however possible, and so he prioritized Europa League, especially heading into the final weeks of the season. It was a squad ravaged with injuries, but they somehow made it to the final of the Europa League, and on that night in Bilbao against Manchester United, Big Ange finally made history with Spurs. A first major European trophy in the club's history, a first major trophy since 2008. He'd achieved success at Spurs, something not even Mourinho or Conte or even Pochettino much earlier had. Alongside his players at the parade celebrating the trophy, Big Ange teased at what his third season could bring.
And I'll tell you something, I'll leave you with this. All the best television series, season 3 is better than season 2.
Except, the Tottenham board dropped the plot twist. He was cut from the cast for season 3. They sacked him.
We will leave it there at Oakwell because there's some huge breaking news to bring you that Ange Postecoglou is going to be sacked by Tottenham Hotspur as their head coach. So,
now this one angered a lot of Spurs fans and neutrals too. Yes, the league form was bad, but he had to deal with an inconsistent squad. He is the same man who finished 5th the season before. He had just won the club's first major trophy in 17 years, but all of that didn't matter to Spurs. They sacked Ange, and this time he caused an uproar from all angles.
It was not a day where I just scrolled through my phone and I said nothing about our gaffer. It's like it's always was something about him. But yeah, it was just strange how everything went afterwards. And of course, when you think like, hey, he's the manager that won like Tottenham. Then afterwards, when he got sacked, I just sent a text to my dad, to my friends, saying,
Players like Mickey Van der Ven were stunned. The fans were pissed.
Look, I get it, 22 league defeats, there's no excuse for that. But I'm still seething, I'm still raging from, I can't quite process this. Like, it's a momentum issue to me. It's a goodwill. It's any momentum we had now has just been squandered in true Daniel Levy fashion, like only he knows how to do. And we deserve to be relegated. Do you know what? We deserve to be relegated. I'd like to apologise to Ange Postecoglou on behalf of...
From an analytical standpoint, sacking Ange would have only made sense if they decided to go for a more stable coaching name in the market. The next managerial decision was the most recent, and it caused the divide. Thomas Frank, an overachiever at Brentford. In the eyes of the Premier League, a stable face, a nice guy. His biggest merit was creating formations to face the top 6 and then the rest of the league, establishing players like Brian Mbeumo and Ivan Toney, and making Brentford a household name in the league. The plan for Thomas Frank was to build a structure at Spurs. This time, Spurs really wanted to go long term, at least that's what we thought. But the demerits were almost too much to ignore. It's not that Thomas Frank wasn't capable, it's what he was up against. This Spurs team needed a rebuild if they really wanted to compete in the major competitions this season. That rebuild didn't happen. To make it worse, they kept getting rejected by their ideal transfer names in the market. Then the injuries came. Thomas Frank was only with main striker Dominic Solanke for 20 odd days this season. He never coached James Maddison or Dejan Kulusevski, two of the club's most creative players. He tried to make the most of what he had. The actual signings at the beginning were encouraging. They took the reigning European champions PSG to a shootout in the UEFA Super Cup final. Lost just once in their opening 10 games in all competitions at the start of the season. Kept 5 clean sheets in that process, but once the injuries started piling and combining with the fixtures, Thomas Frank didn't stand a chance. In the end, he became a sad victim. The results in the league as of recording this have Spurs just 4 points off 18th place West Ham with 12 games to play. Thomas Frank was sacked, despite taking Tottenham into the Champions League knockout phase after finishing in the top 8. Proved that at Tottenham, patience expires faster than projects develop. So the big question here is very straightforward. What is really the problem with Tottenham? Or in this case, what is the model of the club?
You know, when you walk into Tottenham, what you see everywhere is it's everywhere. And yet their actions are almost the antithesis. They're real curious in terms of understanding what are they trying to build and what are they? Is it there's obviously they've built an unbelievable stadium, unbelievable training facilities. But when you look at the expenditure, particularly in the wages structure, they're not a big club.
The logo says to dare is to do, but they hardly ever do. The fact is they have the identity of a big club. But when it comes to recruiting players and finding the right coaches for the method, they are miles off it. Spurs keep hiring different types of managers: defensive, attacking, pragmatic, intense, and they all hit the same way, all with the same results. No long-term process, no long-term results. As of recording this, the new man at the helm is Igor Tudor.
Took today to be confirmed. We've seen it yesterday. Igor Tudor is the guy who's going to take the helm for 12 Premier League games. And he needs to make a quick fix. He has to find some belief. He has to galvanise these group of players. Because let's not get away from this. There's 5 points between them and West Ham.
A glance at his track record suggests this could end up very badly for Spurs. Until they choose an identity and prepare to stick by it with every manager, they will continue to look like the problem. But what do you guys think? Have the managers really been at fault? Or does that Spurs board need to go? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to check out the analysis of why Thomas Frank failed at Spurs in the next video.